Up until now I've been using this sat-nav mount that I made pretty much just after I bought the bike. I only put it on the bike when I'm actually using the sat-nav, but the problem is that I've been putting the power supply in and out so many times that it's gone all loose and floppy. And so the power keeps going off on the sat-nav when I'm riding. Now, there is a sort of a solution, because the sat-nav also came with this mount, but it's a suction mount. But there's no way I'm going to rely on something like that for the bike, and you can see how easily it comes off as well. But I quite like the way it mounts. It clips into the bottom and it's held at the top, and it's really nice and firm. And this mount has a separate power input with a different sort of plug as well. Don't know what it's called, but it's sort of bigger and it fits a lot tighter. So what I'd like to do is build some sort of a mount where this will sit somewhere there. I've drawn up some plans that uses a piece of aluminium that this will sit down into, and I'll glue it into there with some Sikaflex, and with a little mount that's mounted onto that goes onto the bike. And I've got the plans big so I can read it, and I've got all the coordinates mapped out so that hopefully I can do this on the mill. And I reckon I've got material available, so let's go and have a bit of a look. So I've got some 10mm plate that will do the trick for the main part of the mount that little plastic thing will go into, and a little bit of this will do for the mount that goes on the bike itself. So the plan is to roughly draw the pieces that I need, cut them out on the bandsaw, and then cut them down to size on the mill. So let's get into it. Because I'm mounting this on the handlebar clamps, I want a couple of thick washers that will just raise the clamp a little bit. So I'm going to do this first, just out of a bit of aluminium. The washers need to be 15mm diameter. Now the material I'm using is 15.8. So the magic of having a DRO on the lathe is that I can just put those numbers in to work out how much I need to take off the diameter, transfer that over to the y-axis, and then I can set my cutter depth back to 0, which will give me the 15mm diameter. Magic! Now I've got my 15mm diameter. It's a simple matter of just parting off the two washers, and they're going to be 4mm thick. I'm going to make the piece that the plastic mount snuggles down into, and this is the 10mm aluminium. And every milling job starts with getting a nice square piece. For the final pass that gets the width right, I'm just going to engage the auto feed so I get a nice smooth cut. Now that I've got a nice square piece, my plan is to cut a 3mm deep pocket inside this that the plastic mount will snuggle down into. I've planned all my cuts so that I've got a 0 point in the bottom right hand corner of the part. So once I set my DRO to 0 on the bottom right hand corner, I can use the DRO to go to every other place. So the first step is to find that point right on the bottom right hand corner. And to do that, I'm using an edge finder. When the bottom part of the edge finder touches the material, it offsets, and so you can see when the part is actually being touched. And once that's done, then you can go to the DRO and 0 that point. But because the edge finder has a 10mm diameter, now that I've got that 0, I can move 5mm, and that will give me the absolute edge. Now I can re-0, and I've got my X coordinate for the point. Now I can do exactly the same process for the Y-axis. Okay, so now I've got 0, 0 on that point, and now I can just move around the part using the DRO to get all the other points. And I'm using an end mill to cut this pocket. I want the pocket to be 3mm deep, so first of all I'm drilling each of the corners, and then I'll mill out from there. I'm moving the cutter around manually, and this isn't giving me a very nice edge. A real machinist would have engaged the auto feed to get a nice smooth cut, but it's not going to be seen, so I'm just going to keep on moving. With the pocket cut out, all I need to do now is drill a hole for that bumpy bit to go through. I don't have a proper drill for a 30mm hole, so I'm going to use a Forstner bit. This is really used for wood, but it should cut the aluminium okay, but I'll give it a head start by drilling it out to start with. Okay, let's see if it fits. Yep, that'll do. Now a real machinist would do this on the mill itself, but I'm not a real machinist, so I'm just going to smooth the edges on the grinder. Progress is being made, and the main technical part is now done. And you can see that the sat-nav mount snuggles down in there quite nicely. I've also made the bit that will bolt onto the bike, and I just need a bit between on a bit of an angle, something like that. That will do the trick, and I think I might weld it. To start with, I'm just going to tack the pieces together. I'll take it back to the bike and then I'll be able to bend it to get the angle correct. I'm very helpfully putting my arm right in the way of the camera. Very professional, but I'm just bending it a little bit to get the angle just where I want it. Once I've done that, then I can weld it up. Not only am I not a proper machinist, I'm also not a proper welder. Now that one weld there is pretty good, but this one up here, that was a disaster. So I'll have to resort to cleaning up those welds. With that done, a bit of a polish up on the buffing wheel, and we should be finished. Turns out it's not the prettiest thing that I've ever built, but I think it'll do the job. I'm going to glue the plastic mount into this with some Sikaflex. The Sikaflex is cured, so now I can mount it to the bike. Some of you might be wondering why I've mounted it so low. I actually prefer it out of my line of sight rather than right up in my face above the instrument panel. Some of you might also be wondering why I just don't use my phone. Well, there's no way I'm going to put my expensive iPhone out into the elements. This is just a cheap sat-nav that we've had for years, but it works perfectly, allows me to plan my routes, and it doesn't require mobile phone reception to work. I'm happy with this. It's nice and solid. There's no way that's going to jump out of that mount. So, job's done. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.